Is the West lost? You hear a lot of people today opining on that. Some people are like, it's definitely lost, and this is why, and this is how. But is it true? And is there anything we can do about it? Hi, welcome back to Far From Eden. If you're relatively new to the channel, this is a different thing that we do, and we do this on Sundays. We know that there's certainly a problem with dating. There's certainly a problem with the laws and how they punish men and fleece men in family court, which is an ironic name, or, to say the least, because it helps destroy them, especially the man. And that's important to talk about, to explore, to absolutely teach, because believe it or not, there are still some men who think that it's only them, that this is just what's happened to them, that they chose wrong, that they somehow weren't a good enough husband, etc. But that's all a symptom. All of those things, I think, are a symptom. And I think it ties into, is the West lost? I mean, yeah, because the foundation on which the West was built is crumbling. And there were another couple of guys, over 200 years ago, that thought the same thing. In the early 19th century, they thought the same thing, to the extent that they abandoned their career path, where they were going to follow in their late father's footsteps into law. They realized what was going on. Again, this is the beginning of the 19th century, so early 1800s. They realized what was going on and decided to dedicate the rest of their lives to bringing it back, fortifying what makes us us, what makes us Christendom. And they did it through fairy tales. It sounds crazy to our modern ears. But it's one of those things, if you know, you know. And we fell into it like by accident and started going, oh my gosh, there's so much truth in here. This is who we are. This is what we should be taught. If people knew, if men knew what these fairy tales teach, they wouldn't have fallen for so many witches' spells. They wouldn't have had to deal with so many evil stepmothers and mother-in-laws, because they would have known that they exist. Those things are real. You call them your ex-wives. My God, you're gonna get in so much trouble. You're not supposed to say these things. Remember, it's all your fault, men. It's your fault. Okay, so what are we reading today? This one's called Loyal Godfather Sparrow. Once upon a time, there was a deer about to give birth, and she asked the fox to be the godfather. However, the fox invited the sparrow to be godfather as well, and the sparrow also wanted to invite his special good friend, the house dog, to be godfather. We're inviting a lot of different characters into the family, aren't we? I wonder how that's going to go. However, the dog's master had tied him up with rope because the dog had returned home very drunk. Don't you hate that when your dog returns home very drunk? I can't wait to hear what you guys are going to say about that, because you're usually so funny in the chat. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, he came home very drunk from a wedding, as one does. The sparrow thought that this was not a problem and pecked and pecked at the rope, one thread after the other, as long as it took for the dog to be released. Now they went together to the Godfather's banquet and enjoyed themselves very much because there was plenty to eat and drink there. Uh-oh. The dog, however, didn't pay attention and drank too much wine again. When they stood up, his head was so heavy that he could barely stand on his four legs. Nevertheless, he staggered part of the way toward home. Finally, however, he fell over and remained lying in the middle of the road. Just then, a carter came and wanted to drive over him with his cart. Wanted to drive over him? Well, that's not very nice. But I think we're seeing a theme like this dog came home drunk. The sparrow was like, hey, it's not a big deal. It's totally fine. I don't know that was a good decision. There was no repentance. Rojas, there was no repentance. Rojas is in our chat every time, and he's our spiritual janitor. It's very helpful with context. Several other of you guys are that way too. I don't want to leave you out. But we know Rojas he's on it. Okay, Carter, don't do that, the sparrow cried out, or you'll pay for it with your life. However, the carter didn't listen to him. Instead, he whipped the horses and drove the horses right over the dog so that the wheels broke the dog's bones. The fox and his sparrow dragged the Godfather home, and when dog's master saw him, he said, He's not with us any longer, and gave him to the carter to bury. Now the carter thought that the dog's skin was still useful. This is awful. So he loaded the dog onto his cart and drove away. However, the sparrow flew nearby and yelled out, Carter, you'll pay for this with your life. Carter, you'll pay for this with your life. The carter was angry at the little bird because he thought he was being taken for a fool. So he grabbed his axe and tried to hit the sparrow, who flew higher into the air. Instead of hitting the sparrow, the carter hit his... Oh my God. I don't like this one. Instead of hitting the sparrow, the carter hit his horse's head so that the horse fell down, no longer with us. YouTube. The carter had to leave it lying there and drive on with the other two horses. Then the sparrow returned and sat down on the head of another horse. Oh, geez. This is not going well for this carter. It's really not. And this is like the dog made a bad decision twice in a row, but made the bad decision. The sparrow made the bad decision picking the dog. It's like bad decisions and consequences just piling up. That's a good thing to teach children. You know, you might think, oh, this little decision, like the sparrow was like, oh, he was drunk at a wedding. It's fine. Red flags. How many red flags did you ignore about your ex? Guys, how many things did you think, oh, it'll change. She's just young and feisty. She'll mature out of it. It didn't mean anything. It'll get better. How many red flags did you look past? And what were the consequences and how did they snowball? Because that's what I see here. Carter, you'll pay for this with your life. The carter ran toward the bird, who yelled, I got you. But as he tried to hit the sparrow, he struck his horse on the head so that it fell over. No mas. Now there was only one horse left. The sparrow didn't wait long and sat down on the head of the third horse and cried out, "Carter, you'll pay for this with your life." But the carter was now so furious that he didn't think about what he was doing. There's a lesson. He was so furious he didn't think about what he was doing. So emotion and not being able to regulate it. All right. He didn't think about what he was doing and just swung his axe randomly. Now all his 3 horses had been beaten to the end, and he had to leave the cart standing there. Angry and vitriolic, he went home and sat down behind the oven. But the sparrow had flown after him, sat down in front of the window, and cried out, "Carter, you'll pay for this with your life." The carter grabbed his axe and smashed the window, but he didn't hit the sparrow. Now the bird hopped inside the house, sat down on the top of the oven, and cried out, "Carter, you'll pay for this with your life." Crazy and blind with rage, he chopped the entire oven to pieces, and as the sparrow flew from one place to another, the carter smashed all the household utensils, mirrors, chairs, benches, table, and all the walls of the house. Finally, he grabbed hold of the sparrow and said, "Now I've got you." He stuck the bird into his mouth and swallowed it whole. However, when the sparrow was in the carter's body, it began to flap its wings, and it fluttered up to the carter's mouth, stuck its head outside, and cried out, "Carter, you'll pay for this with your life." Well, now the carter gave the axe to his wife and commanded, "Wife, strike the bird in my mouth and end it." But the wife missed her mark, and instead she struck her husband in the head so that he immediately fell down to the ground with no life, while the sparrow flew out and away. Well, we've got a couple things going on here. We've got the dog. It didn't end well for the dog. The sparrow had all this to handle because the sparrow made the wrong decision. You shouldn't have made the dog the godfather, right? Because this was not an upstanding individual. And I think we look past that today. Like the idea of just getting drunk. It's like no big deal. It is a big deal. Like so much violence happens with people who are drunk, you know? I'm not saying that you should never taste alcohol, but leads to bad things. And it displays someone who can't control themselves, doesn't know when to stop. And the dog had that, and the carter had that. Interesting that the carter ended up, destroying the dog. But they had the same issue. And if the sparrow had not trusted the dog and made him the godfather, then none of this would have happened. None of this would have happened. The dog had no temperance, right? And then the carter had no temperance, no stoicism. No, like, well, I'm super angry. I'm not going to swing my axe around. And I mean, of course, the wife missed. Don't trust your wife to do a job like that. It's just like added that in the end. It's so important. Do you realize, I know from listening to you guys, how much you had to raise yourselves after you kind of got out of your house. And, yesterday's video really talked about that, because it talked about how the mom, is like the domineering force in the family and what that leads to. And this is, you guys have had to go and figure out, what does it mean to be a man? And from what I've heard from you, it means no one's coming to rescue you. You have to figure all this out yourself, how to regulate emotions. The father used to do this for you, but he's been set aside as far as what his role is in the family or as a father. It's like, you sit down, the women know how to raise the children. And you guys enter the world pretty unprepared. And so you have to figure out all this, like, oh, I got to keep it together. Oh, I can't react that way. And you probably look back to maybe your college years or your younger years when maybe you did get drunk and you did make some decisions and you had to figure out a way out of that. But if you had been raised with this on your radar at all, how much better would it be? How much better would you have been at recognizing other people's behavior and other red flags, specifically in the people that are your exes now? Okay, so the next one is Prince Swan. There was once a maiden all alone in the middle of a large forest. Suddenly, a swan came flying up to her. It had a ball of yarn and said, "I'm not a swan. I'm an enchanted prince. And if you unravel the yarn to which I'm attached, then I'll be released from a spell. But take care that you don't break it in two. Otherwise, I won't be able to return to my kingdom and won't be saved. If you unravel the yarn, you'll become my bride." So she's got a responsibility. And if she messes it up, she won't get to be the bride. Let's see what happens. The maiden took the yarn, and the swan climbed into the sky. The maiden unraveled the yarn easily, and she unraveled and unraveled the entire day, so that the end of the yarn could already be seen. However, just then it unfortunately became caught on a thorn bush and broke in two. She was probably doing this too fast and wasn't careful. The maiden was very distressed and wept. Since it was turning night and the wind was blowing so loudly in the forest, she became afraid and began to run as fast as she could. And as she was running, she saw a small light and rushed toward it. Then she found a house and knocked on the door. A little old woman, came out and was astounded to see a maiden standing before her door. It's usually, I don't want to predict, but I am already suspicious because we've read enough of these. I mean, look how much we've read. When there's an old woman living alone, it's usually not a good person. Think about that and what it means today, and how many of them are, doing tarot cards and that sort of a thing. Weird. "Oh, my child," she said, "where are you coming from so late in the night? Please, may I have a place to sleep for the night and also some food?" she asked. "I've lost my way in the forest." "This is a difficult situation," the old woman replied. I would gladly give you what you want, but my husband," okay, she's not alone. Oh my God, okay. "I'd gladly give you what you want, but my husband is a cannibal. If he finds you, he'll eat you. There's no mercy. But if you remain outside, the wild animals will eat you. So I'll see if I can help you get through this." Okay, so she's not living alone. It's not a little woman living alone. So now I feel better because it's less likely to be a witch. Oh, golly. Okay, here we go. I'm nervous. Okay. The old woman let her enter, gave her some food to eat, and then hid her beneath the bed. The cannibal always came home before midnight, right after the sun had fully set, and left right before sunrise. So it wasn't long before he entered and said, I smell human flesh. And he searched around the room until he reached under the bed and dragged the maiden out. Now this will make for a good snack. Okay. But the old woman pleaded and pleaded for the maiden's life until he promised to let her live overnight and to eat her for his breakfast. However, the old woman woke the maiden before sunrise. Hurry and get away before my husband awakes. Here's a golden spinning wheel for you as a gift you're to cherish. My name is Sun. S-U-N. My name is Sun. All right. The maiden went away, and in the evening she came to another house, and the same thing happened there that happened the previous night. At her departure, the second old woman gave her a golden spindle and said, My name is Moon. On the third evening, she came to a third house where the old woman gave her a golden reel and said, My name is Star. And she also informed her that even though the yarn hadn't been completely unraveled enough, hadn't been completely unraveled, enough had been unraveled so that the Prince Swan had been able to reach his kingdom where he was the king. In fact, he was already married. Oh no. Well, that wasn't the deal. But she ran off. When something broke, what did she do? She ran away. Well, that wasn't the right thing to do, was it? She ran right to a cannibal. Don't they all? I'm just kidding. Oh, this is wild. Okay, so Prince Swan had been able to reach his kingdom where he was the king. In fact, he was already married and lived in great splendor on the glass mountain. Then she said, You'll reach the mountain this evening, but a dragon and a lion are lying in front and are protecting it. That's why you must take this bread and bacon to pacify them. And everything happened just as she said. The maiden threw the bread and bacon into the jaws of the monsters, and they let her pass. When she came to the castle gate, however, the guards wouldn't let her enter. So she sat down in front of the gate and began to spin on her little golden wheel. The queen peered down from above and was pleased by the beautiful little wheel. So she went down and asked if she could have it. What did I say recently about women coveting in yesterday's video? Funny. Funny how it all ties together. All right, so the queen wanted the spinning wheel. The maiden told her that she could have it if she could spend the night next to the king's bedroom. Things are getting freaky. The queen agreed, and the maiden was led upstairs to a room. Now everything that was spoken in this room could be heard in the king's bedroom. So when it was night and the king was in his bed, the maiden sang. Doesn't King Swan still think of me, his faithful Julianne, his bride to be? She's come from afar where she's seen all three, sun, moon, and star, and faced two beasts. Won't King Swan now wake up at least? Sweetheart, he's married. But the king didn't hear her because the cunning queen had been afraid of the maiden. Smart queen. Women know what women are. Honest to God, we know. This sisterhood thing is baloney. We know what we are. We know how we manipulate and lie. We know it. And we can tell when another one's doing it. We all can. It's not just me. I'm just bold enough to say it. Okay, so the king didn't hear her because the queen was cunning and been afraid of the maiden and had given the king a sleeping potion. So he slept soundly and didn't hear the maiden and all that she had revealed in the morning. All her efforts had been lost, and the maiden had to return to the gate and sit down and spin with her second spindle, which also pleased the queen. The queen wants what the maiden has, and the maiden wants what the queen has. Nobody's content with what they have. Wow, that's so unlike women. We're not like that. Not even one little bit. All right, so she's spinning with her second one and it pleases the queen. So the maiden gave it to her with the same condition that she would be allowed to spend the night next to the king's bedroom, where she sang once again. Well, once again she sang, "Doesn't King Swan still think of me, his faithful Julianne, his bride to be? She's come from afar where she's seen all three, sun, moon, and star, and faced two beasts. Won't King Swan now wake up at least?" But the king slept soundly due to the sleeping potion, and so the maiden lost her spindle. On the third morning, she sat down with her golden reel and kept winding it. The queen wanted this precious object as well, and promised the maiden that she could spend another night next to the king's bedroom. However, the maiden had discovered the queen's deception and asked the king's servant to give the king something else to drink that evening. Then she began to sing again. See? The maiden figured, okay, the queen knew what the maiden was up to. The maiden figured out what the queen was up to. And we've got a situationship going on here, right? We've got two women. They want the one high value man. There's nothing new under the sun. These are two women, and they're vying for the same man. They full well know that they're both there, and they're competing. This is the same thing that happens. It just happens in dating scenarios. And they use words like, oh, this is the king and this is the maiden, because it just shows you that's a high value man. That's a man that women want. And they're not only manipulating each other and, being shady with each other, they're manipulating the man too. The queen's using a potion to put him to sleep. The maiden is telling the servant, don't give him that potion, because I'm going to be singing in the next room, because I'm going to lure him away. There's a country song. Like, back, is it Tammy Wynette? You ain't woman enough to take my man. Like, this has been going on forever. Women competing for the high value man and doing whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. And that high value man might be like, oh, wow, this is awesome. No, it's really not. It could go south real quick. False accusations, violence. It could go south real quick. It's a lot of chaos and a lot of headache. And this is a reason why men are done. Wouldn't it be funny if the king's like, forget you both, I'm out? Wouldn't that be so funny? I don't think it's going to end that way, but it's funny. I don't think the fairy tale is going to end that way, but dating and relationships as we know it are ending that way. Because men are like, this is not worth it. I don't want this whole headache. You know what I mean? It's your private parts are not worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. This king has no idea what's going on right now. And it's a whole lot of drama. Okay. All right. So she told the servant not to give him that potion. All right. I got real excited and lost my spot. So she discovered, okay. So the servant gave the king something else to drink. So she's in the room next to him, and here she goes. The swan song. Doesn't King Swan still think of me, his faithful Julianne, his bride to be? She's come from afar, where she's seen all three, sun, moon, and star, and faced two beasts. Won't King Swan now wake up at least? Well, the king awoke when he heard her voice, and he recognized her and asked the queen, quote, if someone loses a key and then finds it again, which key does one keep, the old or the new? Oh. The queen replied, certainly, the old one. Oh, I don't think she understood the question. Queen, you're not the old. All right. Well, then, he said, you can no longer be my wife. I found my first bride again. The next morning, the queen had to return to her father's realm, and the king married his true bride, and they lived happily together until they died. We are not supposed to date and then break up and date and break up. It's not how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to stick with the one person. You know what I mean? Like your first love, your first high school, whatever. Like that's supposed to be your person forever. And if it's not, then maybe we shouldn't be dating or going steady in high school, what have you. Because all it does is teach us to break up. And this is at least the second fairy tale where the king or the man or whatever returned to the woman that was his first, and for whatever reason they got disconnected. I think it was last week when we read Sweetheart Roland. She stayed faithful to him. He had forgotten her. She found her way back to him. He remembered her, and they ended up together. This is very similar. It's the same theme. And I don't think the story is about, hey, you messed up. I think the point is that it's the first one. That's your person. So we have to choose wisely and based on, character, values, that sort of thing. And we need the societal pressure to stay together. It's a good thing. Pressure can be a good thing, It certainly protects us from ourselves when we want to act out because we have feelings, like in the first fairy tale, we're going to swing our axe all over the place and end up destroying our whole house because we were mad in the moment. And was it really worth it? No, it wasn't. So the societal pressure to don't break this up, don't ruin this, because in the grand scheme of things, and I'm talking to the ladies who, there's probably one or two listening, we end up swinging our axe all over the place because we're mad in the moment and it seems really big, but we can't see 20 years down the road what that decision of being angry and reacting and making decisions based on that, the destruction it causes. And we can't get over our pride to say, yeah, that really wasn't worth it. I wish that I had my person. I think that we bond with a person when we're young. And I think a lot of times it's extremely damaging when that breaks apart, especially for women. And this second fairy tale, at least, that shows it. She didn't give up either. Let's think about that. She did freak out, when the yarn broke, and reacted and ran off. That was wrong. And he had to move on with his life, right? As far as he knew, she is gone. But men are loyal. They're loyal. It's almost like loyal to a fault because doesn't it end up hurting you? Because it's used against you, And it wasn't the queen's fault. She was just like collateral damage with the whole thing. Wow. That was awesome. Thank you guys for joining me on our literary archaeology trek, digging through, looking for nuggets of truth. We found a lot, as we usually do. It feeds my soul, puts a smile on my face. Thank you guys for sharing this with me. Can't wait to read your comments about these fairy tales. It's always so interesting to get your feedback on this. And you guys always point out stuff that I didn't catch. Always. I'm thankful for that. Protect your peace. I hope you've enjoyed your Sunday. Feed your soul. I love you guys. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye.